Today you'll see two knit pants, and this pattern has a lot of variations in the styles, so it can take you to any occasion from athletic to normal, formal wear, whatever. Waistband, pocket, split hem, it's all really good fun and easy. Let's see. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today I'm really happy to share my Nusle joggers from Stich to Stich. This is a brand new pattern that has been in testing, and I have two pairs to share. I think for a lot of us, a pant designed for knits, stretchy, comfy, that is also pull up is going to be one of our favorites because they're just so easy to fit, to sew and to wear. For the Nusle joggers, you have a waistband made out of the same fabric as your pants. Inside you have an elastic and you sew some casing, some top stitching, grommets and a cord or drawstring to bring it in and adjust at the waist, fitted at the hips. And then the legs have three styles. One is the more classic that you could wear for whatever occasion, just depends on your fabric. And it's a straight leg, fitted at the hips and sort of at the mid-thigh, then it goes straighter down. And on the side seams, you have a split hem with mitered corners. Love the style. I've chosen a really special fabric for it. And then the other styles can be a little bit more informal, a bit more athletic. And these are the actual joggers, I would say, because these legs are more tapered. You can have a full length with a cuff at the ankle or a capri length with a cuff that ends up around the calf. At the front, you have slanted pocket openings that are super easy to sew. They're the easiest pockets you can sew with knit pants. And this waistband is described to be mid-rise, but it is specified in the pattern that it should reach the natural waist. A lot of people think that high rise is at the waist, but actually high rise sort of goes above the natural waist. So I think most of us like wearing our pants at the waist. This is where these are supposed to fit. Of course, you can do fitting adjustments to get them there, but that's the way that they're designed to be. Whenever Stich to Stich has a new pattern release, they are 20% off for the first week. So you can get them for a little bit less when they are brand new. I will leave you my affiliate link down below. I do make a small commission if you buy your pattern through my link. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does support the work that I do here on YouTube. You need knit fabrics for these pants, and because they're fitted, it's really important that your knit fabric stretches horizontally and vertically. So suggested amount of stretch is 25 to 50%, so you have a bit of leeway there. Some knit fabrics stretch more horizontally than vertically. I think vertically you need at least 25%. So that it doesn't affect your feet and you're comfortable at the crotch and everywhere. If you have lovely knit fabrics lying around that you love, but they don't stretch vertically, I would suggest you not make your pants out of those fabrics. You really need that vertical stretch. So for example, some stretch velvet doesn't have vertical stretch and others do. It could work, just make sure it stretches in every direction. The same as ponte. Sometimes ponte stretches less vertically. I worked with a few that stretch nothing vertically, so just make sure you check. If you have a heavy cotton lycra, it could work as well. Some sweatshirting materials, they're not all made the same. Some don't stretch at all, don't use those. These are not those types of joggers that are super oversized, that are like super loose. You know, you can get away with using knits that don't stretch vertically with those types of designs, but this design is fitted at the hips, so you do need that stretch. I think the nicest ones are athletic knits. I think they're perfect, especially if you're making the joggers or the athletic styles. One of my versions is a printed athletic knit. I'm making the capri length with a cuff. It's going to be great for walking and working out. That's awesome. And the second pair, I've saved my most precious cotton lycra. It's a pretty heavy fabric, dark gray, blackish denim look. I've been saving it for years for a pair of pants like this that I know I'm going to wear a lot and are going to be comfortable. I think medium weight knits are going to work the best. I would avoid really lightweight knits like ITY or rayon spandex. They're just going to be super clingy. Some of these stretch vertically so much, like rayon spandex, you could end up with sagging crotches and really long pants and just everything stretched out. These fabrics also show your undies, like the lines of your undies, and that does not look good. So avoid the really light weights. I think medium weights are going to be good. Other notions that you need are elastic that's 1.5 inches. You need to measure that around your waist and be comfortable, and that's the amount you need. You need 2 grommets as well, and a cord or drawstring. Sizing goes from 00 to 40 US, and that goes up to a 62-inch hip. The hip is actually the most important measurement that you need to choose your base size. Don't worry too much about the waist. It's almost straight going up, so you have a lot of space at the waist, and you can regulate that with how tight or loose you want that elastic at the waist as well. So if your waist size is a couple sizes larger than your hip size, don't worry, it'll be fine. Now these pants have 0 ease at the hips. That means that the garment measures what your body measures. So you're not gonna have extra space of fabric. But that's good, that's how they should be. That's how they're gonna fit correctly because you're working with a knit fabric. When you're making a pant pattern that you've never made before, I think there's a process of fitting that needs its time, a little bit of thought, and I would never suggest you just go ahead and make things without some flat pattern measurements and doing a simple test garment. Now, I've got a full fitting series about pants on the channel, pull-up pants, but I made that series in context of woven. Woven fabric doesn't stretch vertically or horizontally, so I think it's easier to do fitting adjustments on woven because you don't have the stretch factor to consider there when you're measuring your body and comparing those measurements to a pattern. And I'm talking about the front rise and the back rise, the lengths of those, how they can differ and how you can end up with poorly fitting pants on the back and the front. So the process for a knit pant is a little bit of a trial and error and hoping for the best. Whatever adjustment you think you need to make, if you thought this was a woven pant, it would be less with a knit. So I did measure my pattern, my front and my back. For my front, I needed to add 1 inch to the rise at the front, in theory, if this pattern was for woven. And at the back, I needed to add 2 inches if this were for woven. But I know if I add these exorbitant amounts to these, and these are knits, I'm gonna end up with a crotch down and it's just not gonna be right. So I sort of divided everything by half. So at the front, I added 1/2 inch. I added that all the way across. I'm showing you a diagram here. You can see the pocket on the side will be involved if you're doing any length adjustment on the front, whether you're adding or taking away, make sure you do the same with the pocket so it makes sense. At the back, I decided to add 1 1/4 inches. So I divided that 1 1/4 inches by 2. And you can see I added in 2 places. So on one, it's straight across, and on the other one, it's like a little wedge. That's because I wanted to keep the side seams the same on the front and the back. So you can see on the front and the back, I have that 1/2 inch on the side, so the side seams match. But then I needed a little bit more on the back, so that's why I took a wedge where it goes to nothing at the side seam. You can add the length at the back at the center in 2 different places if you need to. I measured the inseam. It does give you the inseam in the finished measurements. And I added 1.5 inches there to the length of the legs. I need that because I'm just a little taller. So after making my adjustments on the front and the back, and these were empiric, they don't mathematically match my body. They're a little bit shorter because my fabric stretches vertically. I decided to make a wearable muslin, having really high hopes that this was gonna work really well. So I have a lot of athletic knits in my stash. I found one that was 1 meter cut, and I thought it was just enough to make the Capri, the shorter version with the cuff. So I thought I'm just gonna make that one as a test garment. If it works, I'll be elated. If it doesn't work that well, there are other things I can do to it later to make it work. So yeah, I did that to test my adjustments first. I made it, I was happy, and then I went ahead and cut my super, super precious fabric that I was saving for the long version with the split hem. For the sewing, we're mainly gonna see my full length, straight leg, split hem version. I'm gonna show you how to sew the pockets, general construction, the split hem, the mitered corners, and I'm going to use my athletic knit joggers to show you how to do the waistband. So you'll see how to put these together. It's really easy. Let's see. This is the facing piece for the pocket opening, and we need to cut 2 of these mirrored. I've sort of calculated that both pieces are going to fit here in this piece of fabric, and I've already interfaced it. I like block fusing with knits and wovens, and I think with knits you can really get the fabric to shrink, the spandex in there. With the glue, it can really turn out smaller. I'm gonna use my actual fabric piece to cut the other one. It's just easier, and I'm just gonna mirror them. So wrong sides together here. That's how I make sure they're mirrored. And I'll just cut this one out the same way. This is the bottom of the back leg. I've done the same with the front leg where the slit is going to be. Up to this section, you sew with 3/8 and you sew up to that dot, and you can see that there's more seam allowance over here. This is part of the pattern, it's not a hack. So the original pattern piece had this horizontal shape like this. So it would go down here, and then you would have that shape and then that. And that's, I find, difficult to serge neatly. So I just did a little curve like that. It's going to be much easier to serge. It's not going to affect anything. I'm still going to sew up to there, press the seam allowance open. It's just that inside is going to look a little bit curved. That's just something I do with all my slits because I just find it easier to work with like that. Here are the pattern pieces for the Nusle joggers that have a straight leg with a split hem on the side seam. So this is the back leg, that is the front leg. But over there on the side, you're going to see the seam allowance go a little wider over there. And the same happens at the bottom of the side seam on the front leg over there. Over here on the front, you can see the slanted pocket opening, and that is the facing that's going to go sewn onto there. That's the one that you just saw me interface. That would be sewn there and flipped. And then for the pocket is just one piece. That's the one that you see on top. That's just gonna go behind that one and then top stitched. It's like the easiest pockets you could ever sew. And here is the waistband. And I'm adding extra is a back patch pocket. Now that doesn't come in the pattern. I just borrowed the pocket from the Brampton shorts, which is a pattern from Each to Stitch. My other joggers are made in an athletic knit with a print, so it really didn't bother me that there were no pockets at the back. But when I'm doing something in a solid, like this one, I think I really want the pockets at the back. I feel that there's something missing if they're not there. That's just something I want to add there, something extra because I want to do it. Otherwise the pattern is still going to fit the same. These are the pocket pieces that are going to go on the front behind the pocket entrance. So you can see that I've serged this curve right here up to there. Now I haven't serged this yet because this is going to be part of the side seam, and we can do that all in one go when the pocket is already on the front leg. So for now, just this. Now there's one thing more that I want to clean up, and it's the facing for the pocket opening. So you can see you have one short end and a long end, and this is the long end. This is the side that I want to clean up with the serger. The short end can be left raw because this is the side that's going to be sewn onto the pocket entrance. So serge this. Here we have the front leg. This is the crotch, as you can see there, and this is the slanted pocket opening. Have your leg right sides up and find the facing that's going to match. This is the one that matches. Right sides together here. You can see the black interfacing. The long end has already been serged, and this is going to match perfect right there. You're even going to have some of the facing involve some of the side seam, but we're just going to sew this. It's just that this piece has been true to this shape, and we're going to sew this with a narrow zigzag at 3/8 of an inch. I'm using a jersey needle number 9014, and it's not there because that's the one that's on the machine. And to sew, I'll be using a narrow zigzag. That 7 is just the number on my machine. You know, that could be another thing for you. But the width of the stitch is going to be really shallow, 0.5. It'll look almost flat, and that's the stitch length. So it'll look a little wavy, it'll give you stretch, but it won't be like a proper zigzag. You know, it'll be really, really shallow. So this little facing is interfaced to stabilize this pocket opening so it doesn't stretch out and gape over time. Okay, there's the seam. You can see it better from the other side. The narrow zigzag is going to allow that give. And now we need to understitch this facing. So pushing all the seam allowance towards the facing, I'm going to sew on the edge right there with the same narrow zigzag. If possible, you want to avoid straight stitching with knits because as they stretch, they can pop. You know, they don't have give to them. There's understitching that's going to keep the facing inside. You can see from the wrong side that this had to be there because you need that to complete the hip area. I'm going to give it a little press and I'm going to baste it, and then we can top stitch this down. I'm going to do that with a twin needle. Okay, here we have the facing towards the inside, understitched and hand basted on. Now I did the hand basting right on the edge where you have the serger thread, so the inner edge of the serge bit right there, and that's going to be a reference now for me. When I sew, I'm going to try and get my twin needle, one needle here, one needle there from my twin needle, so the stitching is going to be right in the middle of my presser foot, and that's how I'm going to catch everything here on the edge, and it'll look nice with a twin needle, like fake cover stitching. And twin needle stitch creates a zigzag at the back, and it will allow this to give a little bit when you put your pants on. I like using a 3.50 stitch length when I twin needle, especially with a fabric that's a little heavy like this. Not only is my hand basting keeping the facing inside without moving, but it also serves as a type of mark. And there you can see my twin needle. I think it looks really nice. I love this cotton because it looks like a denim, but it's super stretchy. It's so nice. Okay, so here we have one pocket bag. This is going to be part of the hip area, and this curve has already been serged. And it's so easy because this just goes behind this. So all you need to do is align everything. I would start by matching up the hip so that that's aligned here, and then come up and match the top. Everything's level here on the waist and on the hip, and I'm going to put a few pins here. This is how it looks on the back. You can see everything matches here, everything matches there. And now the same way that I did with the facing, I'm going to do some hand basting right here on the inner edge of this serged area. And it's going to serve to hold it in place. And I'm going to see the thread on the other side. It will be my mark. And then I'll top stitch from the right side of the fabric. I've also basted around the waist and around the hips. I've been cleaning up some of the edges of camera, so I've serged all the edges of my back patch pocket. This is going to be like any patch pocket. I'm going to fold the top by 1 inch and then fold all these other edges by 3/8. Now I didn't interface this. I don't want this to upset the stretch of the pants. The pants have 0 ease. I do need to let the fabric stretch when I'm getting in and out of them, so I don't want my pockets to not stretch here. You know, usually with wovens, you would interface this area to stabilize it, but this is a tight-fitting knit pant. I'm not going to do that. And plus, the knit is pretty structured and heavy already, so I'm just going to leave that there. Now, I could have left all of this raw. You know, in essence, this doesn't fray, but I think it looks really messy and I just want things to look nice, so I do finish edges. I prepared my pockets ahead of time, so I folded the top edge and top stitched it with a twin needle there, and I hand basted it. I folded it by 3/8 in there. I hand basted it to keep the fold. Then I took my finalized pocket and put it onto my joggers. I just pinned it and played around in the mirror until I figured out where I wanted them to be. So I've just transferred that placement onto my back leg. I'm also going to mark this on my pattern piece for the future. If I make this again and I want pockets, I'll know exactly where to put them without fiddling around and trying them on and things like that. And I'm going to just top stitch with a twin needle here. That will keep it in place. It's not the strongest of stitches. It's decorative for me. I don't plan to put things in there, and that will allow the pants to stretch and move with me also. Okay, here I have my leg pieces on the table again. This time the pockets are already on, front pockets, back pockets. Now if you sew your pocket with a twin needle, when you finish it might look a little wavy, but when I pressed it, the pockets are really good. They're completely flat, so as long as you're not stretching your fabric as you sew and you just let the feed dogs work, it's not going to end up wavy. It looks perfectly fine. So because these pants have the slit on the side seam, we can't just sew everything like we usually do, so we are going to put a front and a leg back together eventually, but first we have to serge these edges of the side seams separately. So you can see this area that comes out for the slit, we need to serge this, go all the way up and do each leg separately. So it's basically 4 long edges, because when we sew the side seams, they're going to be pressed open, and that will allow the slit to be pressed open on the side. I've got a front leg and I'm at the serger. You can see I have serged this. When you go further down, you're going to have a few layers because it's part of the pocket, so a few more layers for a little bit, but then you get back to a single layer, and then you go down, 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 and you get to the area where you have the slit. And because I cut it out slightly curved, it was super easy to serge like that instead of doing it if it was a 90-degree angle. I find that harder to manage neatly. I've got 1 of these done. I have 3 more side seams to go. Okay, after serging all the edges of the side seams, I've placed a front and a back leg together, right sides together, and another front and a back right sides together, and I've pinned the side seams. So I'm going to sew this with my narrow zigzag so I can press the seam open. Getting towards the bottom, there'll be a dot where you have to stop sewing and reinforce, and then the rest will be left open. So I'm just going to do the simple seam off camera, but I'll be back to show you about the mitered corners there. Here we have the side seams. We've sewn right up to the dot, and we're going to do mitered corners. But before we do them, I would suggest you serge the bottom for the front and the back. You do need it to be serged to finish the mitered corner. I'm going to show you 2 ways to do mitered corners. One way is in the pattern, and it doesn't require you to measure anything. So on the pattern you have your hem allowance and then the seam allowance that you would have if you sewed this completely all the way down, which is 1 inch from here. And so I've got that little mark there and I've got that little mark there. So if you fold this, it doesn't really matter which way you do it, but let's say you're going to fold up your hem allowance first. I can see my little line in there, and then you're going to fold this again like this. So you fold it in by 1 inch both ways. What you would do is you take a pen and hold all this together and just make a little dot here where all this intersects. So here and there. When you open this up, you're going to have a mark there and there. And then you would just take a ruler and do a diagonal line. So that's how you would get your diagonal line. Then you would fold this onto itself, right sides together, meet these up right here. So you have your line one on top of the other. And this is what you would sew. The other way is exactly the same thing. It's just that you don't have to fold anything. You just measure. If your hem allowance is 1 inch and the slit has 1 inch hem allowance, all you need to do is double up what your hem allowance and your seam allowance is. So because in this case it's 1 inch, you measure 2 inches from the corner and you make a mark here, and the same from this other corner, and you make a mark there, and then you do your diagonal line, and it's the same thing. You would get the same mitered corner. It's just that in this case you measured. I prefer the measuring way because you don't have to fiddle around folding up things, but in essence we have the same thing. You can use a straight stitch for this. Take your scissors and just cut. Just leave yourself about 1/4 inch hem allowance, and then we can just take this, flip it, and you get this really nice mitered corner inside for the slit. So just repeat. There's 4 of them to do, 2 per side. Okay, here we have the mitered corners done on the side seams. That's the other one over there. Now aligning the inseams, I've put some pins and we can serge and sew these. I'm going to serge and then sew with the sewing machine at 3/8 of an inch. My fabric is heavier. I prefer to have the 3/8 seam allowance there, so that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to top stitch the slit first. So starting from the hem, going up and then going across horizontally and then back down. Okay, so I've sewn that, that's done, and now I'm going to pick up and start the hem right there and go all the way around to the other side. I think the hem with the narrow zigzag looks pretty discreet. I never want a hem to stand out and it's gonna stretch. So here we have our 2 legs done separately. Hem is done, the slit, all the seams, the pockets, it's all done. It's easier to press them separately also. Just go ahead and press these long seams, much easier to do. Keep one wrong sides out, turn the other one right sides out like that, and we're just gonna put one leg inside the other this way. Okay, give it a good shake. And now we have the front crotches together and the back crotches together. We just sew this in one go in a U shape. This is the center front of the waistband, and you can see there's a little line here. If you have enough fabric to cut the waistband on the fold, just fold away that little bit. I think this is preferable. But if it's to save fabric, the pattern has an option here where it's got the seam allowance, so you can have a center front seam, and that is the way I had to cut my waistband. I was not able to get this waistband on the fold because I just had 1 meter of fabric. Now you have this little round thing, that's where you're going to put the grommet, and on my fabric I've got it there with a black dot. Okay, so I did that straight seam there. To join them, I've pressed it open. This is a print. You're never going to know that I have a seam there. Both waistband options will have a center back seam. So on this one, you're going to see there's a dot there and there's a dot there, and this is basically the space you need to leave open to thread your elastic through later. Now the final thing I'm going to do at the iron is just fold these wrong sides together in half and just give it a slight press just to set it a little bit. Okay, so here is my waistband. Grommets are in. This is of course the center front. The center back is the one that has the opening for the elastic later. And then you have some notches in here in the waistband. They're wrong sides together right now, so I've put a pin. That's going to match one side seam, and this one is going to match the other side seam. The waistband is slightly smaller than the top of the joggers, so we're just going to pin it all in place. This is the center front of the waistband, and I flipped it so that the grommets are touching the right side of the pants. I have a center front seam on my waistband. You might not if you cut it on the fold, but I made sure those seams match. And then along here we had a mark on the waistband that matches the side seam. You can see that the waistband is slightly smaller, not too much, and everything around there matches well. So I'm serging the waistband onto the top of the joggers, and I'm not trimming any fabric away. I do want to still sew this with a sewing machine at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I don't like waistbands sewn onto things and just left with that little seam allowance that the serger gives you. I just think it's bulky and uncomfortable. So I'm going to do that with a narrow zigzag after sewing this. This is how my narrow zigzag looks. It's almost like a straight stitch, but it isn't, and it's going to allow stretch. The stitches aren't going to pop. Now this is the center where I wanted to match the seams, and they're really well matched there, the grommets. Next we're going to thread the elastic. It's 1.5 inch elastic or 4 centimeters. I've just tried it around my waist and figured out what's comfortable. Okay, so I've got both ends of the elastic poking through. I made sure everything's even and that the elastic hasn't flipped inside. And so what we do now is we cut a square of any woven scrap. I've got this piece of fabric, and you just cut it 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, which is the same as the elastic right there. And all we're gonna do is place this piece of woven behind these ends, and we're just gonna center it there. So that woven piece at the back will stabilize it, and then we can just do a whole lot of stitching around here. We're going to have a flat area everywhere, all the way around the elastic. This is the itch to stitch way, so any garment that has an elastic inside, you're going to find this method. You can see all the stitching I've done there. It looks pretty messy on the other side, but it doesn't matter. It's going to give you a smooth elastic inside. Already hand sewn the small opening, and now I'm just doing the top stitching on the waistband. Both of these rows are 1/4 inch away from the top and the bottom of the waistband, and I'm just stretching everything as I sew. Where the grommets are here, just be careful, you know, you press the foot might jump on them a little bit on the edge. So I'll just do the exact same thing 1/4 inch away from here, and I'll be using the edge of my presser foot as a guide. And so the next one, it's the same thing, and then you can just thread the cord or drawstring through there. So here is my wearable muslin. It turned out super wearable. The fitting adjustments I made to the crotch, front and back worked really well. This is the one where I showed you how to sew the waistband. Really easy to do, and if you've seen my previous video on the channel, I've shown you how to put on grommets. So I didn't include it in this video because grommets go on anything. So have a look at that one to see the detail of the grommets. They'll help you adjust the waist, and they look really nice. I chose the silver color there because it's a little bit less formal, I suppose. And I have my cord there to adjust, super comfy. They're really simple. They have a cuff right here. This is a Capri length, so the cuff on this one is gonna be bigger than if you made the full length joggers, because obviously your ankles are smaller, so it doesn't use the same pattern piece. And I like the fact that this cuff isn't super smaller than the pants, so it doesn't give you all that blousing that I've seen on some styles. If you saw in the tutorial with the heavy cotton, I was sewing and serging because the fabric was quite bulky. Because this is a lighter athletic knit, I didn't do that. I just used the serger for all my seams, just normal. So this one was actually very quick to make. So in my opinion, these types of pants are only suited for athletic activities. I don't think Capri pants with cuffs look good, like with heels, like to go out. At least for me, my style, I would never. These are 100% athletic for me, and they'll be great in the gym for walking or whatever. I always want that ventilation on my legs. I don't wear full-length leggings or full-length anything when I work out because I get really hot. So I have all my fresh legs under there, and I'm really happy with it. So you'll see it styled sporty. These are my Nusle joggers in the Capri length with a cuff. I actually made these as a wearable muslin after making my fitting adjustments, and I found the fit is super good. This is an athletic knit. This is the only way I'm gonna wear them for sports. Here is my pocket. The fabric is super stretchy. There's a facing that finishes that pocket, and it's super easy to sew. I think the fit is really good. Really simple, easy to sew, come together real quick, and the waistband has an elastic, a casing, a drawstring, and some grommets there. Really nice features, details that will help you adjust the waist and be comfy. These are great pull up. These are going to be amazing for the gym or to go for a walk. Really love the print and the fit, and I could make so many of these. I really like these. So in the tutorial for the second pair, I left you before sewing the waistband, and for this one, I used the exact waistband piece from the pattern. I just cut it shorter. So I took my waist measurement, my body waist measurement, and took away 3 inches for negative ease, and I sewed this onto the top like a yoga waistband. So you can see a little bit of pucker right there. That's because I stretched the waistband to match the pants, but when you wear it, it'll be smooth and it's super comfy. I don't need an elastic or a drawstring or anything inside. It's just really clean. And I thought it was more appropriate because this fabric is so heavy. This one has 10% spandex. It's got great recovery, so I thought I was gonna get away with this type of waistband. I wouldn't have been happy to do that with this fabric though. This is lighter. I thought, yeah, I do need that elastic for stability structure there. So those are things I think about. Super nice pockets right here. You can see that this cotton lycra looks like denim. It's so nice and it's so soft. It's just the softest thing. You don't get hot in this. And I borrowed the pocket from the Brampton shorts and I sewed that on with a twin needle. I think this really needed it because it's a solid. I would feel that there's something missing there. Straight leg is always going to be worn, you know, they're classic. Love split hems. I usually add these things as hacks to patterns, but I didn't here because it's the pattern. I always love a good mitered corner. It's so neat. These are my full-length Nusle joggers in a really heavy cotton jersey that looks like denim. I've got split hem. I really love the fit, super comfy. They're going to be a staple, and I've got it paired with my Bainbridge pullover, also from Stich. Up closer you can see these pockets. They're really easy to sew. The fabric is super stretchy, as you can see. They're so good. I added my own patch pockets at the back. That's not part of the pattern. Here you can see the bottom, how the leg is straight. It's not tapered, it's not flared, it's just right. And you can see the small split hem on the side. I really love these. This was a really precious fabric I'd been saving for ages for a really comfy, well-fitting pair of pants like this. Here's a similar outfit, this time with a cami and my recently made Nazare hoodie, also from Stich. These pants can go a long way. I'll wear them in the summer as well with something short sleeves. I love that little split hem there. You can't go wrong with a pair of black pants. I mean, you just can't. And this is the most comfortable fabric and comfortable fit, so I'm just super happy. I really like that the Nusle joggers have different options for the legs and the styles in the same pattern, because you can get more garments from the same pattern that look different. They fit the same, but you get more options, and I think that's really cool. I really love these. Don't forget that the Nusle joggers are 20% off during the first week, and that goes through February the 8th. I'll leave you my affiliate link down below. We're a couple days into February and I love this month, my favorite month, because my son and I share birthdays on this month. I'm a person that won't get sad because I'm adding years onto my life. Not sad at all. That's all from me. I'll see you again very soon with more sewing. Bye.